Hello and welcome to the Hyzer Flip podcast, brought to you by Ultimate Disc Golfer. I'm Brunch.
And I'm Null.
Every week, we'll be bringing you a conversation with an Ultimate player turned disc golfer.
We hope that this podcast helps you on your journey through disc golf.
Without further ado, let's get into it.
Today we are joined by Markham Shofner of Washington, D.C. Truck Stop. Markham has been playing Elite Club Ultimate for over a decade. This summer, Markham also played in his first A-tier disc golf tournament. Thanks for joining us today, Markham.
Hey, how's it going, y'all?
To get things started, can you tell us a little bit about your transition between sports? How did you pick up disc golf?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a full transition right now. I'm kind of dipping my water into disc golf and hoping that Ultimate comes back at some point in our lives. Transition happened, so I moved out to San Francisco last summer, and I live right next to Golden Gate Park, and some of my really good friends in the city were playing a lot of disc golf. But since it was the middle of the USAU club season, I would just join them and play with like Discraft, Ultrastar, which people apparently in the biz call a lid. Folks thought it was really funny being out on the course like with a bunch of frisbee players who half of them were playing with these like big white plastic things that don't go very far. But I was still having a blast. And then once the season ended, I started playing with actual disc golf discs and got hooked pretty quickly for a lot of reasons, mainly because they just fly so far. And then was playing on and off a lot in the off season. And then with COVID hitting and the USAU season effectively getting canceled, I've just taken a lot of that time and energy that you would normally have for practice and travel and training and just play disc golf 4 to 12 times a week at this point. And I think that's the road that maybe a lot of people are going through right now. I'd say at least a lot of people in San Francisco or a lot of people that I'm talking to on Twitter or text friends, they seem to all be kind of dipping into disc golf in a similar fashion and really enjoying it too.
Yeah, it makes sense. We definitely are going down a similar path as well.
Same timeline.
It was sort of one of those things where when our college season got canceled, we turned our attention to the club season. And then after a month of training for that, we realized that was also canceled. And then we had to find something else to do. So disc golf came along.
Yep.
So in the future, in a non-COVID world, do you feel like you will be able to play both competitively? Is that something you are looking to do?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think there definitely be an overlap of at least a few seasons where I'd like to be able to do both at the same time. I think what would be really fun is, hopefully USAU comes back next year if, the USA can figure its COVID approach out in a reasonable fashion. But I think it'd be super fun for a lot of Ultimate players at like the Triple Crown Tour tournaments to the Monday or Tuesday after these tournaments play like big rounds at local courses and get to check out like multiple courses in Colorado or Minnesota or Seattle or wherever, Pro Flight or the US Open or Colorado ends up happening in any given year, because I think so many people have gotten into it in the recent months that could be like a really sweet way to play. And obviously you don't really want to play disc golf right the Friday before a tournament and kind of get tuned into disc golf throws, but it'd be really sweet, the Monday or Tuesday after to go play some low stakes disc golf. But I think there's a world where you can definitely make both work. It'd be hard because you probably have to miss some club practices or just a lot of disc golf tournaments, but there's enough of both that I think you can juggle them appropriately. Hell, I'd love to be doing that this year, but it's only disc golf right now, and even that is kind of limited because I feel like so many of the tournaments have been canceled.
I like that you mentioned playing, the Monday or Tuesday after the Ultimate tournament. Have you thought, so we've kind of thrown the thought around of a combined tournament where the weekend is Ultimate, and then you have a separate, tournament on the Monday or Tuesday, if say it's the long weekend or something, where you get a local disc golf course and you host a tournament there and you open it up to the Ultimate players, maybe at like a discounted rate or something, but you let, everyone join. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I think that'd be super fun. Obviously, it'd be like on an individual level, right? You wouldn't be competing as Truck Stop or Revolver at the disc golf tournament, but I think people are going to do that anyway on a casual basis. So it'd be fun to formalize it, even if it's not a straight up tournament that's PDGA sponsored or whatever. It could at least have like bag tags for all of the Ultimate players and some kind of like stakes that people would have at those rounds. But I know at least 20 people who would want to play in those Monday, Tuesday rounds, and so we could definitely get some numbers going.
That's great. So yeah, you mentioned that you have started playing recently. What was the hardest and what was like the easiest part of getting started and transitioning to the discs and the form and all of that?
Yeah, so I think it's a common experience for Ultimate players is to the first time you throw a disc golf disc, just hate it. Like the very first throw, because you've thrown plastic 10,000 times and it started to feel so comfortable and you know it so intimately, and then you throw this other one and it feels foreign and wrong and weird. It's like a dissonant musical chord or something. So I really actually didn't like it for a bit, but then somebody gave me, I'm not sure how well y'all know the discs at this point, I'm still learning them, but like a Rock 3, which is a mid-range from Innova. And they were like, just put it on a slight outside in. I'm still calling it outside in. I haven't fallen into the Hyzer's piece yet, and you'll never catch me saying Annie because that's just the worst. Put it on a slight outside in, throw it hard and flat and out there. And I did a round where I was only throwing the Rock 3, and by the end it started to feel great. I'm sure y'all have felt this, but like the first time you have a quote unquote fully flighted disc or flight, you know, where you really rip it and either it's flipping up to flat and then over a little bit and then fading out, or whether it's just starting on that outside in and trailing all the way and fading out. It's so satisfying. And kind of by the end of that round, I was like, whoa, this is actually really fun. I'm hooked. And I bought a series of my own discs and kind of moved into a bunch of different brands and molds and types. But yeah, I think the first time any Ultimate player gets that one good throw, they'll they might find out that it's a lot more for them than they thought it would be. I mean, because like 9 months ago, I thought disc golf was so dumb, honestly. But it's a huge change of heart, obviously, at this point.
So that being said, I'd assume you'd recommend a DX or the Nova Rock for a beginner, but any other discs you'd recommend?
Yeah, so I actually don't recommend that for a beginner, for a few reasons. I loved it, but I think a lot of people throw slightly differently than me. And I think there's a disc that a lot of people have been loving recently that I suggest, which is called the Comet. It's a Discraft disc that's a mid-range that has a lot more turn than the Rock, right? Like you have to really put some meat in the Rock to get it to do, not like a lot of meat, but like for an Ultimate player, they'll just find a lot more comfort dropping the edge of the disc down a little bit and kind of like ripping it like an Ultrastar. And I think that there are other mid-ranges that do that pretty well. So like Discraft has a disc called the Comet that I think Andrew Fish, who's by far the best previous Ultimate playing disc golfer, seems to throw a lot. And it's got like a lot of turns, so it'll flip up to flat and keep turning a little bit and then fade out. So I think yeah, that something like the Comet, basically a flippy mid-range, can treat Ultimate players really well. And to bridge into something else, something I tell people when they come out to the course a lot, like people obviously want to throw really fast discs, but like a common adage that is so true is either like pick a putter or a mid-range and get used to that one disc, and then kind of build out from there, whether it's to faster discs or more overstable discs or whatever it might be. I think that can help a ton with people who are so intimately familiar with this one Ultrastar to like, instead of trying to learn 5 different discs at the same time, just kind of like pick one disc off disc and learn that disc and then pick another. And that sort of helped me learn flight patterns and discs and that sort of thing. I mean, I'm still learning, obviously, but yeah, that made it all a lot more familiar.
You mentioned how your playing style may be different, right? That's why the Rock 3 suited your style. In general, you're like a big thrower type of player in Ultimate. Do you feel like that has helped your disc golf game?
Yeah. So I guess that gets back to the initial question, which I forgot to answer. Yes, the thing that I was initially best at was just ripping it really far. I mean, it's so satisfying. Like in Ultimate, I'm a big thrower, and in disc golf, I'm a big thrower, but the big throws with disc golf discs go twice as far. I mean, you can throw a disc 600 feet, which is insane. I don't always, I rarely throw it that far. I would say I'm probably right now messing somewhere between like 450 and 500. And even if I really try to throw it like 500 feet, a lot of the time I'll miss because it's hard to control a disc when it's going that fast or that far. But that said, it's still so satisfying to really get a hold of one and have it like fly true to where you want it to go. Yes, the thing I'm best at compared to like a field in a tournament right now would be throwing it far and throwing in the wind. And the things that I'm worst at are putting and putting in the wind. Generally, I think putting is probably harder for most people in disc golf than throwing anyway, but especially for Ultimate players, right? Because we've thrown something or thrown a disc so many times, but we really haven't putted a disc or done this weird little pushy motion, whether it's snap or like spin putt or push putt or whatever it might be. It's just a lot more foreign to us. So getting used to that's been hard. And then additionally, doing that in the wind is even harder because similar to, I mean, if you go out and play a game of Ultimate in the wind, you have to throw it harder and better, right? And we're all used to that. But like, it's the same with putting, right? You have to do it harder and better. And if it's something that you're already like not great at. To do it harder and better is just difficult. So that's definitely been some of my more humbling experiences, is going out and playing around in the wind and like having good tee shots and good approaches, because we've thrown a million times in the wind, but you get close to the basket and it's just a totally different ball game. That said, right now, like this month, putting has been my favorite part of disc golf, because of, been getting better at it, wrestling with it, and it's just like addicting to be good at something and then bad at it the next day. You kind of never know, and it's just this dance of trying to improve. And I mean, I'm sure, like, how's y'all's putting progress been? Is it a similar path for both of you?
Well, so Nald has had a pretty linear path where he started bad, but now he's knocking down, I'd say he's what, like 80, 90% within circle one.
Nice.
Yeah, on a good day.
Whereas
that's spicy.
I have been a sine curve of I got this down, knocking the shots down every time I'm in circle one. And then we played around this weekend. I shot like plus 19 in 18 holes because I just 3-putt every single time, all in my head. He
was missing up, down, left, right.
Yeah, there's no consistency to it at all.
Sometimes if you average them all, it's in.
Sometimes I miss, so then I throw another one right afterwards, and I miss the same way, and I say, well, at least I'm consistent. But that was not the case this weekend.
But that's not what you want. Yeah.
No. But it's amazing. That's the thing about disc golf that I notice is you have a bad day and you're all grumpy on your drive home, but then the next day you wake up and you're like, all right, I want to go fix that. So I was up this morning putting, still not great, but trying to get more consistent. And I think it's a great thing. Whereas ultimate, you have a bad tournament, you have to wait 3 weeks to fix it. Disc golf, no one's stopping. You just go play more.
Yeah, if I honestly have one good shot in a round of disc golf, I'm like happy with that round. Like you can at the end not be excited about the performance, but it still is like, yeah, that was fun. Like that whole thing was fun, just watching the plastic go. I've seen a lot of ultimate players so far go through a similar thing as what I've gone through with putting, or honestly, I'm still going through. Like I played with, I don't know if y'all know Ella Hansen. She's a really good handler who went through the Oregon system, and she can throw an Ultrastar insanely far, and she was coming out to Golden Gate Park and throwing such good drives and like parking, 1 out of every 3 drives. But her putting was like a window into my past from like 3 months ago, and she would like do a nose down thing and it would fall like pretty short of the basket, and she'd just be like, and I could tell it was the struggle that makes it hard, but makes it worthwhile. And like coming back and like I remember like the first round I played where I felt like I was like hitting putts was so satisfying. It's what you keep chasing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So I watched some of your highlights on YouTube, and obviously became very clear you like to huck and you're good at hucking. But I specifically noticed how strong your forehand hucks are. When you started playing disc golf, was that one of your strengths, was throwing forehands, or is that something that you had to adjust to?
I think the forehand in disc golf is immensely different than the forehand in ultimate, way more than the backhand, right? Like the backhand is a matter of the angle and either making it flatter or more outside in to transfer from ultimate to disc golf. But you're still like throwing it similarly hard and with the snap and, all in the same plane and that sort of thing. But disc golf felt a lot harder driving with the forehand for me initially, because a lot of the time when I'm throwing a power forehand in ultimate, I'll just drop that outside edge, find my arm angle and then just throw it as hard as I can. But that doesn't really work with any of these disc golf discs because they're not made to flip up. I mean, some of them are, but they're not really made to flip up in the same way. So no, initially the forehand was horrible, but started working with slower discs, slower approach discs, and trying to work the bad throws out of my system. Obviously, stepping forward with your left foot like you're supposed to in disc golf feels different than having a pivot foot in ultimate. It's more of a baseball low flat throw. But that said, it's becoming more consistent. I think you have to just throw a lot of bad throws before you start throwing mainly good throws. So I would say it was a strength compared to somebody who had never thrown before, but it was certainly surprising to be throwing that many bad throws for me. And it was like humbling and really nice because, when you hit the ones that work, it's immensely satisfying.
Did you find it easier to throw the forehand without a run-up? Was the run-up like the run-up to a left foot plant?
Yeah, I started slowing everything down. I think the best throws are just kind of slow, coming from your feet and from your core. It can help a lot, but I think not as much the run-up or anything. It was mainly just throwing slower discs. Like I think the disc that really taught me how to throw a forehand was the Zone from Discraft, which is kind of that similar overstable disc that a lot of people throw, whether it's like the Pig from Innova or the Harp. Just something that you throw flat and it'll tank out consistently. Or, I mean, you can do so many different things with it, but I was like, okay, I trust this disc to do what it will tell me to do, or what its flight numbers claim. Let me learn how to throw this disc with a forehand. And that kind of helps with a lot of the mechanics. So then I moved up a little bit more to mid-ranges that weren't quite as overstable. But similarly, like with the backhand, I think like learn to throw slow stuff, then slightly faster stuff, then slightly faster stuff, until you're throwing like fairway drivers or faster fairway drivers. Like, I know you didn't ask this, but honestly, my thesis is that most people shouldn't be throwing anything faster than a 9-speed. I mean, everyone's out here just to have fun, so don't let me tell them what to do. But like some of the mechanics you see are people, it looks like it hurts, and it's like they're not getting as much as they can out of the disc. So if people are really trying to like maximize their skill on the course, I would say make sure you have great throws with whatever speed disc you're working with until you like want to push up to the next speed. But like if you can't throw a 7-speed really well with like the backhand or the forehand or whichever one you're working with, you shouldn't be throwing a 9-speed. And similarly with an 11, or I see people like out here throwing 13 speeds only 250 feet, and it's like that's probably not first of all not good for your body and not good for your game. That said, since this podcast seems like it's geared more towards ultimate players, like a lot of ultimate players will already be able to throw putters 300 feet or 250 feet or whatever we're talking about, because we've been working with an incredibly slow disc that honestly isn't meant for distance throwing or much control in the wind. Like the Ultrastar, above all else, compared to these discs, is good for catching, and that means it's not quite as good for throwing. So the fact that if anybody's thrown an Ultrastar for the majority of their lives and turned into a competent thrower on the ultimate field, they should start with a putter and then pretty quickly progress to a mid-range and then start to feel comfortable with fairway drivers pretty quickly. Because we just have so many ingrained reps and your body knows how to do that. It's funny, 13 speeds. So I guess I don't know if I want to admit this on a podcast. I've watched some YouTube videos of disc golf tournaments, and they like don't throw discs faster than a 12-speed, or at least that I've seen.
No,
like they're all just
they all throw destroyers. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like 12-speed discs that they're throwing 550 feet, and first of all, that's humbling to see people do it that consistently with that much aim that far. But then it also starts to make sense, right? Like a 13-speed disc is just harder to aim, and you might not need to throw it that far. So it's a good lesson in just like throwing the discs that you throw really well, as opposed to just trying to learn a fast disc.
Definitely. That being said, have you been picking up an Ultrastar recently and throwing those?
I have. I'll still do it every once in a while. I mean, it kills me. It honestly, like, I get regret, or it's not even FOMO because it's not happening. But it's just like I'll pick up an Ultrastar and just kind of like pivot with it or like throw it, and it makes me like sad in a way, just because I can't play Frisbee right now. But if the question you're gearing towards is like, do you think it changes your form?
That's exactly what I'm gearing towards.
Yeah. So I think it's fine. I think throwing things helps. I wouldn't go play a month of disc golf and then fly straight to a ultimate tournament and play without bridging back into an Ultrastar. But I don't buy that it doesn't help or that it hurts. I think it actively helps. I came back after like 2 months of some serious disc golf and was playing, like I played layout and my throws felt, as good and strong as long as ever. And then I was playing like in the Winter League tournament out in San Francisco, and I felt like I understood the wind in slightly different ways, or like flight paths. Like there's just a language that can apply look, the flight patterns, it's still actually similar in the Ultrastar, like a fully flighted disc or whatever. And you don't want to throw that every time because it's not the throws you're looking for. But I think as long as you're curious about the disc and learning and paying attention to whatever's happening, that it helps your game for whatever that game might be.
Makes you more creative, makes you understand the disc better. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I see that you're playing some more tournaments this summer. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm signed up for a few this month, but actually it's my girlfriend Katie is off of, she's a medical resident, and I'll probably drop from the tournaments that are this month because she's got the weekends off. That said, there's some later in the year that I really want to hit up. Hoping to go to, like, I'm signed up for a bunch of them, and I'll probably drop from maybe half of them just if we're like going camping or hiking, where she's just, not being a doctor that weekend, so we can hang. But on the weekends where she is being a doctor and working, 28 hours in a row or whatever, like, yeah, I'll go catch a disc golf tournament for sure.
What are your goals for these tournaments? How good do you think you'll get by the end of the year?
Well, it's hard to like cap. I don't want to like cap anything with expectations. And I feel like even in Ultimate, when I play like elite tournaments and whatever, I think I just think it works for some people, but I don't like being like, I want to make the semis of this tournament, or I want to win the finals of this tournament, because either like you make the semis and then you're like, cool, we made the semis, that's all we had to do, or you don't, and then you're like, we failed. I think it's like way more fun to approach games and life and competition from like kind of a minute by minute, throw by throw basis. So I would feel weird if I were like walking in an AM1 win or something and I was like 8 down. I was like, well, my goal was only 6 down, or like my goal was 10 down, instead of just being like, my goal is to throw this next throw well, or like my goal is to hit this putt. It is to me a lot more approachable way to be. That said, I would like my rating to keep going up. I would like to win a tournament at some point this year, but there's not like a single tournament that I'm trying to win, or a single round where I'm like, if I don't shoot 1,000 rated round by this date, then like I'm not getting as good enough as fast as I want to be. So yeah, I don't have a particularly great answer for like milestones, if that's what you want.
No, that was a great answer.
That was a great answer. I this year would go into every single tournament being like, I have no expectations. Whatever happens, happens. And people would make fun of me being like, oh, what, you don't want to like win and stuff? I'm like, no, that's not what I said. I just, I feel like if you set up high expectations for yourself and you don't hit them for some reason, then you leave very disappointed. Whereas if you don't have any expectations, no matter how you do, you can find the positives in it and, kind of build on it. And I don't know if that's exactly what you're saying, but
yeah, no, it is. But I mean, if you set high expectations and then surpass them midway through, like it gets confusing, right? If you're like, yeah, I want to shoot 1,000 or a 950 rated round, and then like midway through you're probably sitting at like 980. Then you're like, okay, like this is good, and then maybe you start taking more risks, or you start being like, I can miss this putt, that's fine. It just doesn't. To me, it's not. I'm not in this game or Ultimate or any of it to have like a checkbox on a resume of like, this is my rating, or this is how well my club team did. It's more like the experience of like mental focus on a throw and like preparing for that throw, executing that throw, and then reacting to whatever happened. It's sort of this like eternal dance of like mind and body that make it way more compelling to come back and like keep playing.
Yep. I think that's a great mentality to have. Just focus on what you can control in the moment, and hope that it, brings you wealth and happiness. I don't know.
It's something.
Yeah.
I mean, it's meditative in a way, which I love.
Definitely. Well, I find the great thing about disc golf tournaments, or disc golf versus Ultimate, is after a disc golf tournament, you can still walk. After an Ultimate tournament, you're kind of hobbling to the car in the plane. So
you always got to get on the O-line. You can be walking the whole.
Yeah, well, I wish.
Whole weekend.
I started playing Ultimate in college after not having any Ultimate experience and not knowing how to throw. So when you do that, they put you on the D line and
work on your breakthrows, and you'll feel great on a Monday after a tournament.
Look, you don't have to tell me that. I think my breakthrows are great. I think Nald would agree. He said I was his favorite cutter to work with this year, but our coaches, they had this burning image of me my freshman and sophomore year not knowing how to throw a flick, and they just couldn't get it out of their heads.
When we have Jack Hatchett on this podcast, this will be something we bring up with him.
He looks like a better thrower last year in club than I'd ever seen him look before, and he'd been playing disc golf, I think, in the off season beforehand. So that's a good use case on getting better at throwing.
He was also practicing with us towards the end of our season, so maybe that gave him a little bit of a transition.
Just crushing college kids to make himself feel better.
Yeah,
I'm not above that.
No, but I'll let you in on a little secret. He wasn't. We were still getting D's on him in practice. He says he wasn't trying, but I think he was just getting up there in age. That's all. No, I'm just kidding. Jack's still a great player. Definitely still in his prime, I would say. But also now becoming really good at disc golf.
Hopefully COVID's not too long, so we don't lose the back end of me and Jack and Jay's primes.
Yeah.
Although Jay's probably going to quit soon just because he's obsessed with disc golf, maybe more than either of us.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I guess to wrap things up, for an Ultimate player just starting out in disc golf, I know we've talked a lot about this, but besides like throwing low speed discs and stuff, any tips on practicing, how to get better quickly? Like what is your practice routine and how do you approach rounds and stuff like that?
When I first started playing, I was just playing a bunch of rounds because that was fun. And I wasn't in the mindset of like, I want to get as good as I can, as fast as I can. It was more like, let me just go out to the course and play. And I think people should do that to like light the flame of whether or not they care about it, right? People don't need to immediately jump in and try to get good. They need to like learn if they care about it or not. And if somebody does decide that they want to get good, then I mean, I would guess most ultimate players are pretty tragically bad at putting. So that would be the thing to work on the most initially for like a long time. But like way more than my upshots or my tee shots, my score any given day is reflected on how well I'm hitting putts from within 40 feet. And I think, whether that looks like showing up to your course. So in San Francisco, we don't really have my home course, we don't have like a putting basket that people can putt on anymore because of COVID and shelter in place. And the course is pretty jammed most of the time. So you can't like hang around on a pole or like on a course or a single hole and like practice a bunch of putts. But if that's what you can do at your local course, do that. If not, like, this is another thing I'm going to admit on a podcast that maybe you can edit out later. But like I bought a practice basket and practiced putting on it. And it like made me feel a lot more comfortable with like certain different styles or just like, instead of only putting 50 times a week or 50 times in like a day, if I played like 2 rounds or 1 round that was really bad, I can putt like 200 times in an hour, and you really start to hammer out the form and get that muscle memory down. So I'd say like that's probably the single biggest thing that would make somebody go from being like a good thrower who sometimes parks a hole and like nervously hits a 15-footer to somebody who can like throw it to 25 feet and like be fairly confident that they're going to like at least hit metal or get it in the basket. Yeah. And just like above all else, just like be curious about the disc and like how to get better and what's interesting about the holes and like why we play the game, and make friends on the course. There are like lots of locals who, some disc golf locals are like pretty annoying and lame, but a lot of them are really nice and they can like help you out or fun to play with, and just like grab different crews to play with and have fun. There's a lot of community there that it's not the same as an ultimate community. Like you don't have the team bonding that you have, and I really miss that. But there are different squads, and like people like to compete, and it's got a lot more age difference than Ultimate does, a lot more socioeconomic difference than Ultimate does. It's insanely gender imbalanced, and that's something that needs to get worked on. To be honest, if the sport's ever going to truly grow as they say they want to, but yeah, that's sort of just my thesis on it right now. Go throw, go have fun.
Great.
Let the disc throw itself.
And you're not the only one who bought a practice basket fairly quickly, so.
Don't admit it, but nice.
Well, thank you for joining us, Markham.
Thanks for having me. We should catch around at some point.
Yeah, it's been great. Lots of great advice here. Hopefully someone can listen to it and get some value from it. This has been the Hyzer Flip Podcast by Ultimate Disc Golfer. For more great Ultimate and disc golf content, make sure to check out ultimatediscgolfer.com and follow @UltimateDiscGolfer on Instagram. Thanks for listening. Have a nice day.